Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Con Report wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Ampire Media. That's Ampire. Always much appreciated when you tune in. Don't forget you can read my work on ESPN.com. Also, the John Con Report is presented by AAA. And for you gold members, I'm doing the private Zoom. It's a Friday night this time, 7:30. I know I said Wednesday or Thursday. Friday's better because I don't know what time I'll be available on Thursday. So we're going to do Friday Zoom for the gold members. And don't forget, yes, my folks at Huel are back. You know the deal. 40 grams of protein, 27 vitamins and minerals. I did get my salted caramel. It's really good. So you can go, if you want to go to Huel.com, use the password KEIM, K-E-I-M, 15% off for new customers. See the terms and conditions. There you go. So let's get to the practice update, or just the Commanders update, because a lot of it is not necessarily about practice. It's really about the Commanders, and then, just some moves, and then practice update. So let's start with what things that you need to know right now. So Brian Robinson, no real update there. Asked Dan Quinn about him before practice, said that they're still kind of working through that. If they don't trade him, he's not going to be here. We all know that at this point. So that's where they're at. It's just a matter of when. I would certainly guess before the weekend that this thing is finalized, just to give him a chance maybe to grab on somewhere else before the final cuts are made all over the league next week. And so Washington did make one roster move today. They waived injured Julian Good-Jones. So this, I was told, it's not performance related, but they did waive interim. That means if he does not get claimed off waivers, then he will go to their injured reserve list. So there you go. He was working a lot at guard. Thought he did a nice job at guard at times, and I know he was in the running for a spot. I do think that part of the thing there was Chris Paul emerged. I think that would have made it difficult for Good-Jones to make it. Also, as a center, his snaps weren't always that crisp. So, but I was told not performance related. So there you go. Terry McLaurin update. There's really, and I know people want to know, is he practicing? Well, I think I did tell you the other day that the plan has always been to ramp up the conditioning. So look at like this week, probably next week, conditioning periods, and then get him on the practice field for the week leading into the season opener. So he's got to work on that conditioning. And I also wonder if some of this is not related to obviously the contract and his desire not to get back on the field until there's progression in talks. I was told the other day there's really nothing new there. So if there's no progress, I don't think you get back on there. So I don't know if this is related to that, but I do think the conditioning is legit. You do need to get them up to speed. They're only going to have a couple practices. They'll have one on Thursday. They'll probably have maybe two next week. And then that's it before the season practices get going in earnest. So anyway, there's really nothing new there. And again, with the talks, there's nothing. I was told a day or two ago that there is nothing new to report there as well. So now you know. So let's look at a couple other injured guys. Noah Brown, we saw him on the field before practice catching passes. I don't think that's anything new. It's really always been about his knee, so he can work on catching practice. Just happened to see it before practice. I think the goal there is just to get him ready for the season opener. You don't need to bring him back now. Get him ready for the season opener. So that's his status. Jordan McGee, the linebacker who had been out for a couple weeks, was back on the field today. Now today was only a jog through, but he was back on the field working with the defense. So he got some reps there. Brennan Coleman also back. First time we've seen him on the practice field since August 2nd when he left with an apparent leg injury. So that was something else. And then of course they signed offensive tackle George Font. Now, very, very experienced guy. And I don't think this is just to get through camp. Like, you're not signing a guy like this with his experience to then just cut him 5 or 6 days, a week later, right? So 75 starts. They like his size. He's 6'5". He has almost 35-inch arms, so good length, but that experience is a big deal. And here's what Quinn said on him. He talked about the length, but he also said he was, quote, really pumped that Adam Peters was able to bring him in. Font only was limited to 2 games last year because of a knee injury. It was the same knee, a recurring injury. But he can play both. He has played both tackle spots. So it just strengthens the depth at that position because, right now the options are you have Tunsil, obviously he's a starter. Connolly, if he's not starting, would be a swing, but then you have Trent Scott, who can also play guard, and then you would add Font into that mix. And it's just going to be curious to see how many, I'll get into this in future episodes, how many offensive linemen they actually keep. Is it 9 or is it 10? Because if there's only 9, and it depends on them what they do with Sam Cosmi. And here is the update on Cosmi. So again, Quinn was asked about him as well and said he's still hitting all his marks, still uncertainty about I don't know that they know yet. They may know, but they're not saying whether or not he'll open up on the stay on the PUP list and then miss the first 4 games, or if they'll take him off before then and maybe eyeing like a week 2 or 3 return. The 9-month mark for him would be mid-October, but I think there's always been optimism that he could return a little sooner than that. The question is, how much sooner? And is it 3 games? Is he going to miss 4? Because if you're going to miss 4, you put him on the PUP and then somebody else makes it. If not, then you have to make some tough decisions. And, could a guy like Michael Dieter, like, what's his status? But I'll get into all that in a couple episodes. And by the way, McLaurin was asked, like, why he wasn't there the other night. Obviously, Trey Hendrickson was, but what was that related to? And Quinn, the only thing Quinn would say is that the guys who were doing rehab, he was one, Cosme was one, and obviously Brian Robinson wasn't there. Different situation. But with McLaurin, it didn't sound like we didn't get any clarity as to why that was the case, but he made it seem like because he just came off the pup list, and also was doing a lot of rehab or just, doing extra work, that I think that was the focus, staying here and doing that versus going to the game. So there you go. Anyway, again, today in practice, let's get to that. It was just a jog through. So only about 50 minutes long. The interesting thing is watching the O-line when they're lining up for their first team reps. It was obviously you'd have Tunsil and then Coleman along with Biotish, and then Allegretti and Andrew Wiley were the first group out there. But then after a few plays, you see Chris Paul in at left guard for Coleman. Then a couple plays, you see Chris Paul right guard alongside Josh Connolly. So you would have that first 5 group out there, and then behind them would be Paul and Connolly. I think both those guys have had, I think I've told you, like, Connolly to me has really improved. I think obviously the coaches have seen that as well. But Chris Paul, I think that's been I think as Quinn said, the versatility that he's showing now, that means it's not just power. He's been moving better too. And for that pulling game, for the screen, whether or not he want him out on screens, we'll see. But the pulling action, you've got to be able to do that in this offense. And then he has shown in the preseason that he's been able to do that. So I think he's certainly pushing some folks here. And you should not, I don't know what's going to happen, but I do know, like, that's what they were doing today with the one. So found that interesting for sure. And then the running back situation. So obviously, because you keep getting asked, well, who's going to start? Who's going to start if Brian Robinson's not there? Well, to me, it depends on who are you playing and what is the package you want to feature that day. It's also like starting could be like, what's the first series you're going to do? Like, what's the first play? That could be Austin Eckler. It could be Chris Rodriguez. I think those would be clearly Eckler would be an option. I think Rodriguez would be the next guy up. And with Eckler, he can do a lot of things. So that gives you some options. The question is who's going to handle the load. And I think that's something that remains to be seen. Can Eckler do it? Well, he can do a lot for you, but you don't want to risk. He's going to also, right now, he also might return kickoffs. So you don't want to overload him for sure. Like, you want the durability out of him. So I think you could see the committee and also a lot more with Rodriguez. And here's the things that with Rodriguez that I found interesting. And he says he's faster. In fact, this is what he told us today.
One of my main things I was working on is my speed, and I think last year I hit 20 miles an hour probably 3 times maybe throughout the whole year, and I hit it more times this year in training camp than I have almost my whole lifetime. So.
What did you do to improve that?
Just working with speed, I guess you would call her a specialist. Her name's Lily. She had me doing like mat drills. A couple of guys here actually were with her as well. But yeah, she's tough, and I could see it translate on the field as soon as I got out here.
So he said he's fast, right? So I went back and looked at the next gen stats that we get that, and then you can measure it for like what they do in games. So, and Chris was talking about in the practice field. I'm going to look in the games because that's obviously where it matters. So last year, his max speed was 19.41 seconds. He already went over, I think it was 20.3. It was definitely over 20 against the Bengals. He had last year 7 times we got 14 or more miles per hour, 2 times over 15, nothing over 16. Already 2 times over 15 in the summer and 1 time over 20. So he's definitely running faster. He said he worked with a speed trainer in Atlanta, and that's really made a difference for him. I think that's a big change. It gives him just a little bit more explosiveness. And I think you watch Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. He said he also feels like he adds that explosiveness. So if they're both running like that, then you can get more maybe the more of those 10-yard, 20-yard runs that they just haven't gotten enough of in the past. And then the other thing that Rodriguez said that I found interesting was talking about Anthony Lynn. Somebody asked him, he's like, oh, that's my guy. But one of the things he really likes about him is the attention to detail. He said that there was a pass route that he ran the other night. He said he came off the field and Lynn told him that he was 2 inches off. So that makes a difference in do you win the leverage or do you not? Like that attention to detail can make a huge difference for a back. And I think that's something that can separate guys, when they're running their tracks, when they're running, when they get the ball, what their path is, so to speak. So that's like, that makes it, but on the routes, if you're a little bit off, then it can make a difference between winning the leverage or not. So that's a good thing for him. And then, I talked to Quan Martin today. I thought he did a really good job the other night against the Bengals. He said he's playing faster in the second year in this defensive system. And, like he had a couple plays, you saw a couple plays in the field. There was also a play where you have an offensive lineman pulling out to get him, and he just was able to basically shuck him off and then go help and get on the tackle. Like that kind of play too just shows. And I think part of that is awareness, knowing that, hey, you're coming up there, expect to have this happen to you, but he was ready for it, aware, and he still goes and makes a play. But the play that he really liked was the play at the goal line against the tight end, and here is why. So if you watch that play, and I can't run the play, but when you on the play, you have one tight end going in motion from left to right. So you see Martin's in the middle of the field. He shifts over with the guy, but then he points. He communicates to the defenders on that side to be aware of that. Obviously, they see it coming, but then that the coverage is going to be changing. And then he kind of lines over the tight end, number 89, who ends up getting the ball on the play. And he just goes with him, and you see him as soon as Burrow has a play fake, but you see Martin starting to shoot up already. So as soon as the tight end gets the ball, he can't even turn. If he's able to turn, it's going to be a touchdown. He can't turn because Martin is there. So there was the play recognition. And he said to him, that shows where his football IQ is at. Like that play really stood out to him for sure. Just quick recognition, etc. So also wonder, and I'll cover more of this in the next couple of days, but a couple undrafted free agents played really well. And Ali Cajo, the linebacker, did a really nice job. I think he's making a push is he going to be a roster spot or is he just strengthen the practice squad? And Carlin Viggers is another guy that I think has done, I pointed him out before. I don't know if they keep 6 corners. I think I could see 10 defensive linemen, right? So the question is, do you keep 9 D linemen or 10? And that might open a spot for someone else. I also think for linebackers, it depends. Is Jordan McGee, if they feel he's healthy, then you can go with 5, and it would be Wagner, Luvu, McGee, Madrano, and then Ballore because of special teams. So anyway, those are some of the decisions to make in coming days. And I will go over all this in the next few days, and we'll have another practice report on Thursday. You have the game on Saturday, so we'll do another wrap up after that. And then the final cuts come next week. So there you go, folks. That's all I have for today. I will be back on Thursday with another episode, wrapping up the day, whatever news happens. And that's it. Appreciate you tuning in. Talk to you next time.